Welcome into another edition of Pete's Pigskin Preview presented by Meadowbrook Wealth Advisors of Raymond James. I'm Neil McCready. That is MPW digital football expert Pete DeWeese. Ole Miss goes to Wake Forest. Plays fine. Just plays well. Wins 40-6. For the most part, everyone was displeased that it wasn't 50-6 or worse. So it's an interesting spot for Ole Miss to be in, where they're picking apart 34-point road wins in the ACC, but that's where we are today. Ole Miss plays Georgia Southern on Saturday night in Oxford, 6:45 Central Time, SEC Network, before next week launching into the Southeastern Conference portion of the schedule. 8 games in 10 weeks, starting with Kentucky a week from Saturday at 11 a.m. on ESPN, I believe. So we'll get to all of that in a minute. First, before I bring Pete in and get rolling, I want to tell you that we're brought to you by Meadowbrook Wealth Advisors of Raymond James. It's a full-service investment team based in Jackson, Mississippi, providing financial planning and investment management to clients across the state and surrounding areas. Ryan Geary and his partners are a local team that utilize the strength and resources of a national firm to bring their clients an impeccable level of service. This includes access to investment strategies and portfolio managers not available to all investors. If you're interested in a no-obligation consultation, or you just want to be added to their monthly market update email list, reach out to financial advisor Ryan Geary with Meadowbrook Wealth Advisors of Raymond James at 601-368-2215 or ryan.geary@raymondjames.com. Raymond James and Associates Incorporated, member New York Stock Exchange, SIPC. Pete, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. You and I were talking briefly before we got rolling. Ole Miss just kind of continues to steamroll, for lack of a better word. Might be even more dramatic than that. Subpar teams, which doesn't take anything away from what Ole Miss does, because I think Ole Miss is elite. It becomes obvious to me that in today's college football, I'm curious if you agree, if you have elite receivers, Ole Miss does. If you have a elite quarterback, Ole Miss does. And you have an elite defensive front, especially a defensive front 7, if you can pull that off. And I think Ole Miss does. The sky's the limit. You can kind of go the distance with that. You can nitpick a little bit. Maybe a couple of spots in the secondary where you're like, I wonder what that would look like if they played a really good team. I think the offensive line still remains somewhat disproven because they haven't played anybody. It's not fair to them. I think they look good. They're big. I talked to Ross Dellinger. He was at the Wake Forest Ole Miss game, and he was like, man, they're big up front. And I was like, defense? He was like, no, offense too. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's true. You see them all the time. But it was the first time he'd seen Ole Miss since last season in person. So he was like, yeah, they look different. And I was like, they are. But when you play Furman and then Middle Tennessee and then Wake Forest, you don't go up against elite defensive linemen or elite linebackers, and you just don't really exactly know what it looks like, Pete, because they haven't had a chance yet. But those opportunities are coming. Kentucky's pretty good on defense, and they're a week away. So at some point, we'll be able to stop doing all of this. But for right now, as unfair as maybe it is, it's kind of what you keep sticking with.
Yeah, there's no doubt between the depth and the talent they have in the receiver room, you have to feel good about those guys getting open and making plays against almost anybody. We know what Jackson Dart can do. His accuracy seems to improve, and I don't think his accuracy's been poor, but I think even in those down the field throws, he's shown more accuracy than in years past. He clearly had a bad decision the other night. He has not had many of those through 3 games so far, and he probably hasn't been stressed the way he will be stressed moving forward. But he's shown a willingness and understanding of the offense and desire to protect the football. From a defensive standpoint, the defensive line is absolutely elite. I think the rotation right now at linebacker, as long as the defensive line continues to play at that level, that those guys are going to continue to flourish because they play with such speed at that second level, which is really nice to see. And yeah, there are questions in the secondary. There's still some things that I think Ole Miss and they're upfront about that they don't they know they need to fix. Sometimes it's technique, and sometimes maybe it's just matchup and athleticism. But ultimately, yeah, it's you're in a good place when you get to the point where you can be picky about decisive wins against quality conferences. I mean, that's just reality. I mean, it's a strange feeling, but it happens. It happens at the high school level. It's something that we've experienced this year. Is you walk off the field and you've had a really good night offensively, but you left a couple things out there, and that on paper, while it looks good, that it's not to your standard, and that there are things you could have done better, and you could have been more explosive and limited some mistakes. And so when that is the culture and that is the expectation, then obviously you're operating at a high level. And right now there's nothing to disprove the fact or the concept that Ole Miss is an elite football team. But at the same time, like you said, they also have not played anybody that has truly required them to show their level at this point.
Yeah. And they will, I think, eventually. I mean, you kind of watch the rest of the league and you're like, well, maybe. And then you give up on Kentucky, and then they turn around and had a real shot to beat Georgia. And so you're like, well, I don't know what to think about Kentucky. And then you watch South Carolina and LSU, and you're like, I don't really know what I think about those teams. I don't think either one of them are world beaters. Georgia looked mortal. Here's the thing. And we talked about the schedule before the season, right, Pete, where you look at the schedule and you look at the league today, and the teams that look dominant are Texas. They look dominant. Not on Ole Miss's schedule. Tennessee looks explosive as hell. Like, wow. And they're not on Ole Miss's schedule. Ole Miss, obviously, they play Ole Miss every single day, but it doesn't count in the win-loss deal. Ole Miss looks dominant. Missouri looks really good and tough and tested, but Ole Miss doesn't play Missouri. Alabama looks solid, especially in the young receivers, terrific, and they're pretty athletic on defense. And, they've got a veteran quarterback in Milroe that makes a lot of mistakes, but also makes plays. But Ole Miss doesn't play Alabama. And so the schedule is this way, where the toughest team you play is Georgia. And then after that, it's Oklahoma, who's good, but not great. And, Florida's bad. Mississippi State's bad. Arkansas is not good. It's kind of set up for you to make a really big, deep run because you don't play the other elite teams in the league.
To make a run in the conference or nationally, there has to be some fortuitous bounces, right? Conference scheduling has certainly fallen in the favor of fortune for Ole Miss this year, assuming they take advantage of it with the teams that they do have on the schedule. If they can continue to just build on that with staying healthy and with capitalizing on the opportunities ahead, you certainly look at it and the opportunity exists, because you're right. Georgia did look mortal. I think, you try to tell kids all the time when you think you're a competitive football team that the biggest opponent you have is yourself. Right. And that's certainly a conversation in the Ole Miss locker room, because the reality is, okay, we don't know what Kentucky is, but we know that they're good enough to take Georgia to the wire and arguably potentially should have won that football game. Right. And so when you just look around the league, it doesn't matter. We don't know what LSU is yet. We know there's still talent on that roster, right? And we know that an Ole Miss LSU environment is always going to be a big environment. And so from that standpoint, so much of it is just about handling your own business. And so if the letdown and the drop of standard happened in a borderline blowout win against Wake Forest, and that refocuses guys, let's go, because you'd rather it happen then than a Saturday night on the road where you come home with your tails between your legs. And now it's the what if game, and you're not controlling your own destiny, and all the different, phrases we could throw out there. But I think, this week's going to be interesting because there'll be certain challenges they'll face this weekend. And then obviously moving into next week, then you start to see where are the dents in the armor.
The floor is yours, sir.
All right. So, we talked about it earlier. We're getting into the part of the season where we're going to have more to talk about. We're going to be able to actually look forward a little bit more. Right now, we're kind of in the look back phase, and so we're going to look back a little bit at some of the offense as well as some of the defense versus Wake Forest. And a couple things I'm going to talk about. I try to pay attention to what people are talking about online, whether it's social media, at Rebel Grove, wherever, in the chat sessions or in the other podcasts that you guys put out. And I try to pay attention and go back and look at some of the things that teams have talked about. And I try to pick up anything that I think just the common fan might have missed. And so this clip has been going around. Dan Casey, who runs a pretty popular football account on X. I'm trying to still train myself to call it X. Dan tweeted this clip out. And there was a conversation online earlier today about how do you cover it. And I actually thought Siski had the perfect responses. You don't play dumb coverage versus the look. And he's 100% right. They're getting into a cover one look here. And so they're playing man to man. And typically when you see these two receivers so close together, you're going to see these guys, they're going to change their technique. They're going to play some type of a banjo or a box. And instead, they decide to go ahead and ice it. So he plays man here, and he's playing off man here. Well, the play design, the scheme, and then the ability of Caden Lee to run routes really causes problems. And so, as the play goes, and it's interesting, I went back and actually charted this because I was curious. 4 times since the start of the 23 season, this has been the opening play for the Ole Miss offense. And there have been 2 other times where it's not the exact same scheme, but they're essentially getting to the same progression for the quarterback. They're just doing it with a little bit different structure. So typically they're going to use one player is going to go clear it out, and one player is going to work what's known as a sail route. It's just going to be this deep out route where he's going to climb the space. So they're going to switch release it here. So they're going to take the guy that's lined up as the inside receiver, and he's going to spray release, and he's going to work wide on the vertical. They're going to bring Caden Lee, who's outside, is going to stack underneath now, and he is reading this corner. If Dart gets man-to-man and gets a true win by his slot receiver, he's got the shot over the top. But what they're really trying to do is isolate this sail route. They're going to use a little play action protection on the backside. And so you'll see when they play the man-to-man, it puts the corner in a bind. He now has to rotate inside, and the stem of the receiver, as the receiver works in, the corner starts to turn his hips because he's responsible for anything with that guy. If he runs a slant right there, he's responsible for him. If it turns into a deep crossing route, he's responsible for him. So when Caden Lee restacks him vertical, he gets the corner off balance, and now when he breaks back to the sideline, he just finds all the green grass. The safety in the middle of the field can't help you. He's nowhere in position to affect you right there. All he can do is try to get there and usher it out of bounds. Now, one of the interesting things, or one of the questions asked, was how do you cover it? And so later in the game, Ole Miss comes back to the same thing, but it is, instead of a 1-high structure, it's actually a 2-high coverage. So now there's 2 safeties, and instead of being man-to-man here, there is a guy underneath. So what happens in this scenario, when he releases and we get the same stem, they are both, the corner and the safety, are able to play with depth, and they're both going to read the number 2 receiver. So when he breaks out, he can come off late. He can work over the top of it. But now they also get the linebacker in zone that gets depth underneath to make it a tighter window to throw the football. And Dart does try to squeeze it in there. And if I remember correctly, it actually gets broken up by the underneath player. So, yeah, it's just like any scheme. You're able to defend it. This coverage structure gave them no chance. And so I don't know, a lot of times I think with Ole Miss, this is a very comfortable thing for Dart. It's a scheme that they run multiple variations of. They create the same levels and layers in the defense as far as how they distribute the routes. And so they're getting him something nice, comfortable. At the same time, they're starting a drive into game with an explosive play, which the numbers tell you that anytime you can start a drive with an explosive play, the likelihood of ending the drive in points goes up greatly. One just side note and interesting to me about this play, he is not looking to the field. This receiver is probably off the page unless he gets a specific look. Had he been looking to the field, an explosive day for Ole Miss just what could have been even bigger. And there's so many times you see that on film, and it's easy as a fan, whether we're watching online at home or we're watching NFL on Sunday. Well, he's wide open. Why didn't he get the ball? And a lot of times it's just because he's not part of the read. He's not part of the progression, and so it's hard to know. But it's always interesting to me just how Ole Miss tends to pair some of those things together, and I'm sometimes curious about what look does get him back to that single receiver where clearly Trey Harris had his guy beat on a double move. Moving forward just a little bit, this is something I thought was interesting to see, and Ole Miss actually got to this a couple of different ways, but they tempoed into this scheme, and it's one that honestly Wake Forest runs a good bit of, and sometimes you wonder, hey, did they borrow this from Wake? Did they like it a lot in the breakdown? But they bury this bunch set into the boundary, and they're empty, so they've got two receivers to the field. So from a quarterback perspective, there's kind of two ways to look at it. One is just the numbers game. Do they have 3/3 to the boundary where I don't like my numbers on the fast screen? Okay, and if they have numbers to the boundary, then to the field, I, in theory, have a one-on-one matchup. The other way that you might teach it as a coach is simply look at the field first instead of looking at the boundary. Do I have numbers and access to the field? If I do, take it. If I don't, then it probably means that I have numbers into the boundary. So here, they are going to tempo into it. They do it at least one other time just like this, and then there's a third time in the game where they actually take the tailback and they motion him out into the same scheme to create the bunch late using motion. But the thought process and identification for the quarterback is all the same. Okay, and for a team that likes to run quarterback draw, if you actually watch the offensive line, you will see the center releases late because this is another opportunity where if the box is light, if they expand everybody and it's a 4-man box and you've got, or even a 5-man box, the quarterback probably does have the ability to turn this into an easy draw. In this case, between the split by the number 2 receiver here and the wide split by Trey Harris, you create all of this grass right here. It's an easy hitch route. You get him one-on-one in space with a chance to make a guy miss. And it's just such a simple design. It's a very versatile design, but it is something that Ole Miss used multiple times in the game that I thought was a nice design. Okay. One of the things that Ole Miss has kind of come back to multiple times this year with success is they have cleared out on the outside and they have used pre-scoring on the same sell route that we looked at earlier, but from a different position. Now they're doing it from the number 3 receiver instead of the number 2 receiver. So they're going to work that same concept. So here, outside receiver is vertical. Caden Lee's going to work outside the flat defender, trying to expand him to create a bigger window here for the quarterback. But with him working outside right there, it doesn't pull the safety fast enough, but there's the window there. If this corner and Dart feels this corner dropping underneath, or this linebacker dropping underneath, it makes for a tight window. If the ball goes tall, you have a chance. If the receiver comes out of his break too flat, it is a hard completion that absolutely has to be in rhythm. And you see, we saw Dart throw his first interception of the season, but for the most part, we've seen him make good decisions, and this is an example of that. When pre-scoring comes out of his break, if the ball's out now and is just thrown on a rope, maybe it has a chance, but pre-scoring comes out flat. He feels number 13 underneath it. He wants to throw it, but instead of forcing it, he just recognizes, let me tuck, run, and then we actually see him get into a slide, protect himself a little bit. And so as we move forward in the season, obviously you're going to see Ole Miss continue to operate at a high level in the passing game, I think, against most opponents, but you also want to see them limit the mistakes. And so for the one that Jackson Dart had that everybody's going to notice and everybody's going to talk about, there's several plays like this throughout the course of the game where just he made good decisions, protected the football. And I don't know if it's the same decision that you see 2 years ago and maybe not even last year.
No, 2 years ago he tries to
early in the season.
2 years ago he tries to make that throw, and then last year he probably tries to make it too.
Absolutely, and you can see it here. His eyes, he goes right. He's trying to wire. Where's the safety? Corners bailing. Now he feels the presence underneath in the flat, and you can see there is a window there. But he knows if my timing is off on that window, I'm in bad position. So he pulls it, go get what I can, protect myself, and get down. The very next play, they hop right back into tempo again, and they give them another bunch set into the boundary, but this time they go unbalanced. So pre-scoring is here. He is covered up. He is ineligible because he is covered up by Wells. You've still got Harris on the outside, and now you've got Caden Lee in the slot. Okay, they are going to run the ball here. They're going to run a zone or duo scheme to the left. He's going to lock on here. But the urgency of the tempo, the combination of the bunch into the boundary, typically anytime you get a bunch set like that as a defense, you are either going to have to rotate a secondary player down, which means you're rotating over the top of it, or you're going to have to do what's called pull the string and pull the backer out of the box to adjust to it, because you want to be sound versus the quick screen and versus any type of pass game out there. You can see the effect it has here is it has pulled this linebacker out of the box. And this is the first rushing touchdown for Ole Miss. So that has the effect of pulling the backer out of the box. They're clearly misaligned. You get the corner trying to rotate over lately and trying to figure out what's going on. The ball is snapped in time. And from there, it's just good open field running by the tailback. But the urgency of the tempo, the design and the structure of the formation creates miscommunication in the defense and just creates an absolutely easy run box and an easy run scenario that now they have enough ability to capitalize on against a poor football team. So good job again with design. The Ole Miss offensive staff, and you can see right there, the only thing they could have done differently had they kept this linebacker in the box, then Ole Miss in theory has the hats. Now these two guys would have doubled up to him. These two double to him. And in theory, they still would have had the bodies to block everybody. But as soon as you remove him, they just live on the double team right there and just really gives it an easy run for the tailback. Same next drive, they hop into the exact same look again with tempo. Now you see the defense is trying to adjust to it differently, and so they adjust their count. This time they get the other safety over and they walk him down now. So they essentially have 4 over 3 to the outside. This is the extra player that Dart knows he has to account for. That player is outside of the box. He comes in. Now he feels like it is 3 over 3. Juice Wells does a nice job. It just pins the first guy. Watkins comes behind, and he's going to take the corner. And now you're one-on-one again in the open field. And it's not a huge gain. But again, you're looking at a 1st and 10 right here. And the chains are just set when the play snap. The box is just now down. Tempo is such an important part of this. They get into it right now. Dart makes the throw. So again, you're looking at a 7-8 yard gain on 1st down, gets you inside the 30-yard line. Just such a simple little thing. But the Ole Miss coaching staff has always done such a good job of finding those things and carrying different things from week to week. All right. So this is the long touchdown pass to Watkins. Okay. And again, going back to try to pay attention to what people are looking at and talking about. Somebody made the reference earlier. I showed the first play with Caden Lee on the little sail route, and somebody said, "Oh, is that the same play Watkins scored on?" It's not the same play, but the two are meant to work hand in hand. It's presented differently from a formation standpoint, and there's a purpose for that. Okay, to the field, they're just going to work a little smash with the slot fade from the number 2 receiver. And if you get a matchup in man-to-man and you like this one-on-one, you can take it. But what they've done to the boundary now is it's going to present very much the same way. I'm going to spray release it, and I'm going to look to stay tall over the top. And just like on the first play of the game where we saw Caden Lee come inside, restack vertical, and work outside, once you've seen that now, and here they are showing this too high look, typically the response you're going to get now is he's going to take the outside route. He's going to take the inside route. So when Lee stacks inside, I'm thinking post, but I'm also looking for this out-breaking route. And now as a corner, my job is to come off on it. So what Ole Miss is going to do is instead of putting him back on that same out-breaking route, they're now going to put the switch route on this inside bender, this inside post. So now this corners that expecting to fall off on the out route is outside leverage on Jordan Watkins, who's now running vertical away from him. And now it's an easy read for the quarterback. If the safety stays back, I'm working underneath. If the safety drives the inside post, I am over the top right here. So it's just a real simple switch release to get to a real nice. So there's the inside bender. You see as the route switch, the corner ends up chasing it again. Looks like the corner thinks he's playing man-to-man, and the safety thinks that he's switched things off with the corner, and it's just an absolute coverage bust. Couldn't be any easier of a throw and catch right there. But again, it's about layering what you're doing schematically, making it look the same at the start of the play as the sail route, and now you're getting back into the post. And again, tempo and miscommunication from the secondary. And anytime you can get guys on defense to talk and you can slow down their reaction speed, there's always a chance for miscommunication and a chance for bust like this, which are so big. All right, the last one I really want to look at from the Ole Miss offense is the interception that Dart threw. Okay, Ole Miss is trying to work the same 3-by-1 sail route I showed you a minute ago, where he decided to pull the ball down and run. So again, the formation's different. It's to the wide side of the field here, not the short side of the field. But they're going to push vertical on the outside, and then they want to isolate pre-scoring here on this defender. Okay. On the backside, they've got a dig route. So in theory, if I don't like my matchup here, I'm coming back for this dig to my late check down for my running back, and I have built a triangle for the quarterback that takes me through my progression. So it's a full field read where he's going to start to his right. Do I like it? Very quickly here, back foot's in the ground at the top of his drop. He doesn't like it. He's trying to come now to the dig. He doesn't see the dig or doesn't like it. And he's going now for his running back, who looks like he actually might be working a little angle route, and it's not there. So he goes to flush. Okay. Right now, the problem here is he is flushing away from every receiver he has on the field. Okay. And what you really would like to see him do in this scenario, it's third down. He's trying to make a play, but you'd like to see him, if not run for it, just throw the ball away, right? Make a good decision. Well, Bentley, I believe it's Bentley. It may be Parrish at running back. It is Parrish at running back.
Parrish, yeah.
Tries to come back and get into vision, and the ball is just slightly underneath because he has a hard time getting on platform to throw the ball. So, from a coaching perspective, one, you take a shot as a quarterback that you don't have to take. Two, you turn the ball over, put the defense in a poor situation when you would rather just throw this ball away, live the punt with a really good defense and go play the next play. So, I thought it was interesting. And Kiffin said it in the press conference, I think, or maybe after the game, he said as soon as he saw Dart starting to drift left, he knew it was trouble. And he knows that because it's the scheme. You're working away from everything in the scheme. You always try to put things in the vision of the quarterback, and backside routes. A lot of times it's either I've split the field in half and the quarterback is working right or left, or it's a full field concept where he's going to start right. And as his eyes pan back to the left, all of those routes are going to come back, into his vision. Well, here, that's what's happening. All the routes are trying to come back into his vision. And when he is forced to flush away from the concept, it just puts him at a disadvantage.
I'm not making an excuse for Jackson here, but I think this is important to note about the maturation of a quarterback. You have to remember a couple things. not you, just people in general. Throughout his career, he's never really had a great defense to support him. And so every possession has been, hey, we got to go score. And even at USC in his time there, that was not a great defense. And his first year at Ole Miss, obviously, it was not a great defense. And then his last year, they were better, but they still gave up a lot of points. And I think he's still adjusting to, hey, I've got a defense that I can trust. And there's going to be possessions during the season where, in this case, Wake covers it. I mean, they did a good job defensively. They covered all the routes. He doesn't have anywhere to go. And you got to let Fraser Messine come out and punt a ball and let your defense go play, and you'll get it back. And I think that's something that he'll mature into.
That's really a great point, Neil. You're right. He's never been in the position he's in now, where he should have some faith in his defense until they prove him otherwise. Everybody on that sideline should have some faith in the defense there. So that is a really good point. And that absolutely, it's hard to break those habits when the habit is we have to go and we have to score all the time. It's hard to just simply let those die. Thought I would kind of flip the script a little bit, head to the defense. And again, really strong performance. There's no such thing in today's era of modern football and some of the things that offenses do. It is extremely difficult to play a flawless game defensively. Teams are typically going to move the football. Teams are typically going to find some success one way or another. And Wake certainly found some in small pieces, certainly never with any type of consistency throughout the course of the game. So, again, just kind of going back and highlighting and looking at some of the things, and I'm going to go to the end zone here, but one of the things we've talked about is the level of communication is so much better right now with this Ole Miss defense. And I'm sure they'll tell you it's not perfect, but the way that they're talking and the way that they're able to get into their scheme and get into their fits is really strong right now. So Ole Miss is going to come out right here. They get this bunch set from Wake, and you see as soon as the motion happens, you see hands going up. Everybody's talking right now. They're adjusting the coverage. The linebackers are adjusting their responsibility. Okay. And then Ole Miss, they're athletic enough to play games right now with their front in ways that they haven't necessarily had a ton of faith in doing that in the past. So they're actually here. They're going to slant Pegues, and he's going to try to slant all the way across the center. And what that's going to do is prevent the center from being able to climb to 6. They're going to take Paul, 11, and they're going to blow him through the backside B gap. Okay, so now if Pegues slants and he comes off, you've put 71 in a bind. Okay, even just from an athletic standpoint, you've put 71 in a bind. What that means now is that Ivy is the quarterback player. He is going to be responsible versus any zone read look for that quarterback if he were to put the ball or pull the ball. And they are athletic enough to be able to do this now. And you see the way that, the ability of Walter Nolan. I mean, his hands and his upper body strength, it's really incredible. I mean, you watch here, and this poor kid, 54, had a rough day all day, but he gets into him, lifts right now, shocks, sheds. If the running back is not tackled there by Nolan, even if you see his only choice to cut is right into the hands of an unblocked linebacker. From a scheme point, you couldn't have drawn it on the board any better. It worked out exactly the way Pete Golding wanted it to work out. And from an execution standpoint, obviously the players executed. Nolan did freakish things, and the plays right there for just such a minimal gain early in this game.
You see right there. You see why NFL people pay in dominant interior defensive linemen what they pay them.
Absolutely. And look, the two that Ole Miss have right now are both really freaking good. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they have depth behind them that can spell them and give them meaningful minutes is probably more than Ole Miss has been able to say in a long time. Okay. One of the things that talked about little bit briefly last week, is I told you that preparing for this, the Wake Forest and what they do offensively in a lot of ways reminds me of what Vanderbilt did last year. And I the more I watch, I just kept seeing a lot of similarity. And, again, it's not just about the uniform colors, right? But it's a lot of really well-designed things to get the ball out of the quarterback's hand quickly. And this type of scheme, offensively is an example of that. I mean, they're working a simple scheme to try and find holes and create holes in a zone structure and give the quarterback easy outlets. Well, Ole Miss's ability and willingness to play more man-to-man, and you can see here, Ole Miss, when they get this bunch look, they are playing a box look. So you have first low, first high and outside, first low and inside, first high and inside. And so now they're going to pass off in a zone concept, and then they're going to collect and take anything that comes to them, which is exactly what happens right here. So they entirely handle the motion and the shift. They handle the communication aspect of the coverage. They handle the execution of the actual coverage. And you're looking at a 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6. So you're talking about a pretty obvious passing down right here, which allows the pass rusher. Jared Ivey's stance looks different now. As soon as this ball snap, Pigskin gets into a pass rush move and works his spin move off the bat. They have a stunt going down here with Nolan and Princely, because I'm not going to attempt his last name because I have too much respect for him. Okay? But right there, even if JJ does not get to the quarterback right there, Ivey's coming off the edge, winning on a bull rush. The pressure by Nolan, and on the other side, the quarterback only has one way to evade. It's an effective rush. And again, it's effective on the back end, and it's taking away those quick and easy throws. And if Ole Miss can continue to get to the same type of pressures and get to the same type of coverage against better competition, then, this defense has the ability to really help this team play a ton of football. Okay. Coverage-wise, there's been some concerns about safeties in particular, okay, and about how our ability to handle certain guys in the slot, okay, and that is the biggest concern for me right now defensively if I'm talking about this Ole Miss defense. So real quickly, kind of gonna give a little lesson here. So Ole Miss is going to get into they're going to get into a look here, and they kind of put the linebacker in a bind. But in a lot of match principles, you're going to play with what's known as divider rules, okay? The divider being this halfway point between the top of the numbers and the hash. Anybody outside of that divider, you're going to play inside leverage, you're going to be man-to-man. And anybody inside that divider, a lot of times, you're going to play outside leverage, expecting help from your safety, okay? Here, he looks like he's in position to be a wall player, but he is also expected to be part of the fit in the run game. So right here on a 1st and 10, when the linebacker sees run, he is forced to come down. Well, the safety is pulled by the slot, the number 3 receiver now going vertical, which leaves 28 on an absolute island right here. And you can see when the ball snapped, he's playing his technique and he's working to feather right here. He's not going to allow that guy to release outside of him. So you see these short little pressure steps as he expands his feet to try to maintain outside leverage. The problem is his feet go dead. If you watch as the receiver goes to cut back inside, his feet go dead and he ends up crossing over himself right there. At that point, he has no choice but to grab. It's grab or give up a touchdown, right? And so in one regard, you look at this and you say, he needs to be better than that. We when we go play elite teams, we need to be better in technique, better in coverage, more athletic, whatever that piece may looks like. The flip side of it, if you're a coaching staff, is you say, if he's aware enough to realize he just got exposed, you'd rather take that penalty than give up 6 right there, right? So there is some give and take. Now,
because the choices were 15 or 53.
Yeah, 15 or 52.
Yeah.
right? With very unlikely chance of anything in between. And that would have taken a drop ball. That would have taken an errant pass, right? Whatever that looks like. And so what you want to see right here is you want to see him again. He's feathering. He's trying to maintain his leverage. And then he goes to collision here and his feet get together and then he's beat at that point, right? I can't tell you with 100% accuracy what they're working, but in some regards, it might be working. Hey, we're going to continue to be physical on this guy, and we're just going to try to funnel him harder underneath and not give up the vertical seam. Some of it might be look, we got to take the lunge out of it. We can't when your body weight gets forward and you lean and lunge with those hands, your feet are going to die, and now it's not a good position to be in. From a coverage standpoint. And so I don't know what they're drilling on the practice field. I can assure you that it is something they're going to try to address because they are living in these types of coverages a ton right now, and they're not going to go away from it. They're going to continue to try to find ways to do it and get into similar looks. Okay. This one has been all over social media, and I had to show it. I mean, again, 54. The man has a family. Walter Nolan did not care. Again, you talk about the explosiveness here. Just right now, hands to the chest and lift, and the kid literally goes airborne. I mean, that's about as freaky as it can get. But again, don't just look at that. Look at everything else. Getting into what a lot of people call to is a penny front. So they've become this 5-man front, and they're playing these wide 3 techniques. They walk Paul down over the middle. So this is they're thinking pass right here. They get into this look. What you've done with this look is you eliminate double teams. Okay. So they get into these one-on-one situations. And so Paul's presence right there is going to occupy the center, which means he can't go help on Nolan. Okay, which is what you want to do is you want to create as many one-on-ones for that guy as you possibly can. And then you watch Pigskin on the backside, so athletic to swim the tackle that's trying to cut him off, get down the line. And there's no doubt that the presence of Nolan helps slow the back down. But even if Nolan doesn't make this play, Pigskin is there to make it. Because of his athleticism. And there's Ivy. He knows he's got quarterback there. So he's patient for quarterback. Everybody's playing their response and everybody's playing their technique. And so the combination of the freak with the kind of fine-tuned understanding of scheme and leverage and then the athletic ability of the other guys all just continue to trend positive for that Ole Miss defense. Moving later in the game, again, trying to look at some things that may be a little bit more negative. Ole Miss again gets into a passing situation, and they are into a pass look. They have both linebackers mugged up at the line of scrimmage. They're trying to show you and present that they might actually send 6 guys. In reality, they only send 5. They're rotating the coverage down. Okay. And now again, you just see another example. The coverage here is actually really good. It's everything you want, and it's just a perfect throw, and the kid makes a catch. And sometimes that's going to happen. And as a fan, it's easy to get frustrated with these throws and these catches, but it's the reality of football, and it's the reality of being out on an island. He is in position. And so I hear people, and I saw some things on social media, and some people kind of messaged me and said, why don't our guys turn around? Well, you're not necessarily coaching guys never to turn around. Typically what you're telling guys is, when the eyes go back, there's no guarantee the ball's coming. But when the hands go up, here comes the ball. Well, when I watch this play, because again, at this point, I'm like, Ole Miss is in solid coverage. Everything's been good. Watch how late, and this is a kudos to the Wake Forest wide receiver. Look at how late the hands go up for the ball.
Yeah.
Right? He waits until the last minute, eyes are up, now hands are up. And at that point, the corner is into his body. There's nothing more he can do. Turning around at that point, you lose connection with the receiver. And if you don't make that play on the ball, the chance of the play being even more explosive is certainly on the table. So here he tries like hell to play through the hands. He argues for the push off. I don't even remember if you get a good look at it from this particular angle. But again, it's not bad position. Okay. There, boom, late hands. You want to see that left hand go up a little bit sooner if you're the Ole Miss secondary coach. You want to see that left hand go up, and he actually does take his right hand and try to rip from underneath through the arms of the receiver to separate the ball, and the kid had just managed to tuck it right into his right arm. So just a hell of a catch right there. It's great execution. Sometimes – as a defensive coordinator, you know and understand that you're putting your kids on an island and plays are going to be made against them. It's about winning them more often than not, and just, again, continuing to be more consistent in your rush to create big plays. Now, this is one where it is 100% a bust in communication from an Ole Miss standpoint, okay? They are selling out right here to the pass. All of that being said, somebody is responsible for the running back. You can see they're playing man-to-man here, okay? These guys are working one of their man techniques here. Ole Miss is man-to-man on this long receiver to the field. There is nobody deep. It's a full rush look. Here comes the safety down. He's about to add to the mix. I would actually guess that he is responsible for the back. And if he is not responsible, I would guess that it's because they're expecting back to peel and they're asking him to peel with it. Okay. Right here, Ole Miss is in solid shape across the field from a protection standpoint, and they get a great play call where they are essentially running a screen to the back out of the backfield. And because of the defensive structure, again, right call at the right time against the right look, there's nobody peels with the running back. And if he catches this ball, the no touchdown, stat that Ole Miss is carrying right now it's off the page. And kind of got lucky on this one. And so this is one where, again, they're in the staff room at some point over the weekend, and they're in the meeting rooms on Monday talking to the kids. There's somebody had that running back, right? And those are the busts that as the season goes on that you have to eliminate. The previous play, somebody just making a great catch on a fade ball, you live with that. This is what you look at as a coaching staff and you go, okay, this is the stuff we got to fix. Last kind of clip. Again, and this is, down obviously in the red zone, Wake Forest on the 5-yard line. They're in this bunch set. And I thought that Ole Miss's secondary did a phenomenal job handling their bracket coverage right here. Okay. They have decided with the defensive structure right here is they are playing man-to-man, but they are actually going to double team this outside receiver. If he breaks out, he's going to take him. If he breaks in, the safety's going to take him. Okay. That means that if he were to break in, now I can play with eyes and look to cut and cheat off of any other route that kind of comes into my window. They're going to work a similar deal on the backside where, again, I'm going to press here with the ability to peel out. I'm going to take him if he releases inside. So now if the back comes, I can catch him, and we don't have to worry as much about the linebacker getting out leveraged. So you see, looking to the boundary side first, the corner's going to step. Okay, boom, funnel him inside. Safety's going to take him. So now the corner can come off on the back. The linebacker sees the running back going out. He knows I've lost responsibility on him. So I'm going to find number 5. There's 5 right there. If 5 is vertical, he's going to go back here probably to make sure that he doesn't cut back inside, or he's going to sit for any type of a shallow underneath. Here, they pass it off. Okay, linebacker, boom. Now play the quarterback's eyes. He works to help somewhere else. If you look up to the field side now, okay, number 20, let me erase my drawing so we can watch it a little easier. Number 20 works up and vertical. You see they're going to sort through the trash. So the man here that's man-to-man, when he shuffles behind, he's going to shuffle and match path. So he's going to sort through the trash so that he can stay on his man, okay? Here, man-to-man here. When he releases underneath, again, fight through the trash, get on the back shoulder, use the back line as your help, run with him. And then up top to the field, they're bracketing number 2. 2 releases outside. So I'm outside leverage, I'm inside leverage. If he were to run a corner route, he's going to be underneath him, use the back line as help. When he breaks inside, now he's got the safety again, inside and underneath. Use the back line as your help. So just really well done coverage from an Ole Miss standpoint right there. The pass rush is effective. You can see it doesn't get there, but it collapses the pocket. The clock goes off in the quarterback's head. His only chance is to throw it up and let his guy make a play. But I just thought a really, you don't spend, once a season starts, they don't spend a ton of time working deep red zone coverage. A lot of that work is done in camp. You only give it so much time throughout the course of the week and in your practice and your situational stuff. And so to be able to, again, to execute it, carry that stuff, because that translates in plays versus anybody.
So Georgia Southern Saturday night, you're there in that state. I know it's probably not a program that you're watching week in and week out, but what do you know about the Eagles?
Honestly, quite a bit. I've had some players play there. I've got a kid on my roster right now that's got an offer. Former colleague of mine whose son's in high school has an offer from Southern. That staff does a good job. Obviously everybody's talked about Clay Helton and his relationship with Kiffin, and we've seen that be in the news. But Ryan Applin, who's the offensive coordinator, spent some time at Ole Miss. You've got Clint Trickett, who is the assistant coach, he's tight ends coach, pass game coordinator. Clint was with Lane at FAU. And so there are several kind of pieces like that. It is a good staff. Their defensive line coach is a kid that I coached against when he was in high school. Their secondary coach is a pretty highly regarded young coach. And so they do a lot of things well. A lot of their players are guys that I remember when they were in high school, some that I coached against, others that I just saw for different reasons. But you look at them, I mean, their first game, Boise's a good program, right? The next 2 weeks, not as tough, but they're averaging 35 points a game. They're slinging it around for about 260 a game, not rushing for as many. And a lot of that has to do with that Boise game. But you look at it, they're averaging 37 passes, 29 rushes a game. So the production may not be balanced, but the attempt is. So I think you're going to see an attempt at balance as much as they can be. You look at the Boise game where Boise's, scoring a lot of points, and they threw the ball 50 times, but they also played 80-something snaps and ran it 30-something times as well. You get to the Nevada game, and Nevada slows the game down. They don't play at the tempo that Ole Miss is going to play at, and the numbers changed. It went to 37 passes, only 19 rushes. And so, for Ole Miss, it's going to be what it always is. It's going to be about using your offense to get out in front and trying to get the opposing team into as many predictable situations for the defense as you can. One thing I think you'll see is there's a lot of similarities between what Lane Kiffin offense used to be and what Georgia Southern is, but there's also some similarities between what it is now at Ole Miss and what they do. You will see a lot more screens out of the Georgia Southern offense than you will the Ole Miss offense. They do a really nice job in the screen game with all the different variations that they use off of run action, off of drop back action. They'll get into empty front if they feel like they can get the ball out of their hands quickly because they do want to keep the quarterback upright. JC French is a kid from right down the road. Very familiar with him from his high school days. He's an athletic kid. They are not afraid to run the ball with him in the read game. He is also not afraid to take off and run out of the pocket. Their leading rusher, I believe, he's like a 6'1", 220-pound running back. So he's a big physical kid. They've got some other guys around him that are a little smaller, little bit more built on speed. Defensively, where everybody has attacked their safeties in the passing game from what I've been able to watch. And so Ole Miss is going to continue to do that. They love being able to attack safeties, when they can. And so that's certainly something you'll see. But the other thing, if you go back and you watch the Boise game, is Boise just lined up and they were more physical and they went right down the front a Georgia Southern. And so Ole Miss is certainly going to try to do the same. There's very little reason, if any, to believe that that's not going to happen. It's going to be about just continuing to limit the mistakes on both sides of the ball for Ole Miss and protect football. And if they do that, then we get a chance to sit here next week and talk about Kentucky and get ready for the meat of the Ole Miss schedule.
Yeah, it's coming. This time next week, we'll be talking about SEC opponents, starting with Kentucky, like you mentioned, then at South Carolina and at LSU before an open date. So lots of reasons to be tuning in next week when Pete and I get together for another edition of Pete's Pigskin Preview. Again, we've been brought to you by Meadowbrook Wealth Advisors of Raymond James. Get in touch with them. If you're interested in a no-obligation consultation or you just want to be added to their monthly market update email list, you can do it by reaching out to Ryan Geary with Meadowbrook. 601-368-2215 or Ryan, that's RYAN .Geary, GEARY at RaymondJames.com. Pete, as always, appreciate the time very much.
Glad I can always talk a little ball. It's always a good time.
We'll be back again next week, like I said, with another edition of Pete's Pigskin Preview. We'll look ahead to the Kentucky Wildcats coming to Oxford. Hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Stay with us throughout the weekend at MPW Digital for content covering the Georgia Southern game and looking ahead to the Cats. For Pete DeWeese, I'm Neil McCready. Until next time, take care.